Cat. How are you today?
I'm good.
So we are going to talk about your extraordinary journey.
Yes.
I'm so honored to have you on Rise. And you are a mom. You are a transformational coach. You are a business storyteller and also the host of Bounce Back Like a Badass.
Yes, all of those.
So before you got to that point, though, let's talk about who was Cat before.
Oh, before all of that, probably the best way to describe it was an absolute people pleaser. So I learned from a very young age. I liked the validation of others, and I liked to be liked. I think that's where the foundation of a people pleaser really begins. And so I kind of went through my younger years, childhood, just going from groups and cliques of people where I did feel accepted, and I felt like I was, part of a group. But also I was really looking to be liked. And that really grew into young adulthood. And so as a young child, I was always very curious. I liked to do art and all of these things. Entrepreneurship was really never part of the dream or part of the plan by any stretch of the imagination. And, we'll get to it, and that's how it turned out. But yeah, as a young child, I really found myself looking for validation of other people. I see that now. Of course, then it was just trying to fit in. Mm-hmm. And that really fed into kind of the lifestyle that I led in my early 20s, was trying to.
I think it's just human nature, that it's kind of part of our DNA where we always want to be liked, accepted. Sometimes we're not so good at saying no. And then it turns into this thing as we become an adult, where all of a sudden now, we want to set boundaries and people's opinions don't matter yes. It's a process though.
It is an absolute process, and something I'm really trying to teach my daughter, who's in that age, that 12-year-old age where other people's opinion really start to come into play, and trying to really get that foundation in her. And I know she's going to stumble, and that, as you said, is life. But hoping I can give her a little bit more tools and guidance in that way to kind of set her own tone.
So leading into where you are today, you had a really significant series of events happen to you.
Yes.
So where do we start? Because I feel like this episode is just going to be one that is going to majorly surprise people watching and hearing your story of transformation, because that's really what it is.
So in my early 20s, I will try to get to the Reader's Digest version of this. So in my early 20s, I started a career here in Las Vegas, working for a huge, well-known hotel, and I made some absolute horrible mistakes from the get-go, and tried to cover that up as one could imagine. And again, I know a lot of this is going to come as a surprise, and we're going to get to the climax pretty soon, but I was stealing money from the company that I was working for, and it snowballed, as it always does. When you do one thing, it leads into another, and until you are brave enough, courageous enough to step out from behind that and accept, the consequences to those actions. And I wasn't, obviously. And so I kept this very hidden for a very long time. And then, of course, it came to light, as it always does. That's the truth and everything. And it was a long time. So I had built myself a career that I could really be proud of. But in hindsight, behind that was this big lie. So the cards fell, and my world was absolutely shaken. And I was found out and, of course, let go. And there was a whole turmoil there, because people knew me as one thing. I pretended to be one thing, and I was somebody else. And I really honestly didn't know who I was. because of all the masks that I had put on, pretending, lying, hiding, everything. And it just kind of came to a head at this moment. And as terrifying as that moment was, it was also such a relief
to get it out.
And, you know, of course, I tried to double back and all these things. And it just kind of felt like, okay, like this is that time. Like if there was ever a time you could like breathe, that was it. And so I did, and I accepted the consequences, but it took a long time to get there. And so there was a lot of things that, you know, criminal investigation and all of these things, because it was that. And it was like almost 3 years from the day it all came about. And in that time frame, I had left a year and moved on and started a new life where no one really knew what had happened. Whether it was I was obviously trying to hide that part of me, but trying to kind of reconcile all that happened. My partner and I were rebuilding what we had. Of course, this came as a shock to him. He had no idea. And I started a new life. We had got married. I was a new mom. I just had my daughter. And, you know, we were kind of going through life. I landed this incredible job. I was doing incredible things in this position and was just promoted. And then I came back to here, actually in Las Vegas, where it all started, to be sentenced to my probation. And I was scared, of course, but super confident in my lawyer, super confident that of what was suggested, that I would be getting probation for about 5 years, which at the time I was like, wow, 5 years. But I was like, you know what? We'll do that. And so I walked in and, scared but confident, and so confident in my lawyer, actually, that I parked in valet at the courthouse.
Wow.
That's confidence. And I will say that I was obviously not sentenced to probation, but I was that day remanded to jail and from jail to prison. And my sentence was 19 to 48 months. And it was very surreal. It felt like everything was going in slow motion. And that was the second time in my life that I had this out-of-body experience. I'd never experienced it before, other than when the day that I was found out and I was brought in and asked those questions. That was another one of those. And I read about it much later, and it's when your body doesn't know how to handle that trauma.
To process
and
it.
So it just kind of checks out. And it happened that day. So I was remanded from court. I did not collect my car. I did not go home, and it was 19 months to the day. Thank goodness, because my sentence was anywhere between 19 to 48 months. 19 months to the day that I came home. And then I came home to what I thought would be a return to my life.
Right.
That I had left to my daughter, who unfortunately I didn't get to see much of while I was away, my husband, and just everyone. And I started to realize that at the point that I went into prison, everyone's lives had needed to go on.
Right.
And mine felt like it stopped. Like I felt like I was in a time trap. And I wanted to, when I came back, just kind of jump right back in to where I left. And that's just not how this works. And so I came home. And the day after I came home, my husband asked for a divorce. And so I was without a job, without a home, without any money, without a husband, and now I was a single mom. And it just felt like I had gotten to this point. I'd done, I'd paid my debt to society. 19 months is a long time. And I felt like this was the prize. And it felt like I was like another layer of rock bottom. I kept getting further and further down. And I didn't know exactly what to do with myself, with my life. But I knew that I needed to keep going because my daughter needed me and I needed her. And so in this time frame, I started to share my story. I was going to therapy because I needed an outlet to kind of work through all of this. But it also felt like in that process that I needed more. And so I thought, okay, I needed a new career because now I've got a felony record, and going for interviews, going for those things was very difficult. What that was probably, obviously going to prison is humbling, but walking into interviews and having to check that box
And disclose
that and disclose why, and that was another shock in itself. So I was trying to still process all of that. And I went to find a career coach. I didn't even know what a career coach was actually, but I just knew I needed a new career. And I felt like that was the answer. It took me about 2 weeks to tell her the reason why I needed to find a new job, because she had asked for my experience, and I had vast experience, marketing, sales, business development. I brought in millions and millions of dollars from a lot of companies. And she was like, why? And I obviously could not tell her. And finally, I was like, well, I've got to tell her. If she's going to try to find me a new career, I've got to tell her.
Yeah.
So it took me a couple of weeks to actually, what I'm telling you now, took a couple of weeks to get out then. And she was shocked, of course. And it was the very beginning of my process. And so she was like, you need, she's like, well, first of all, wow. Second of all, you need to share your story. Like, this is you. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but I feel like this is your calling. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I will, I'm telling you because I feel like I have to, but I'm not going to share this with anybody else that does not need to know this information. And she was like, Kat, I don't know what to tell you, but I feel like you do. And so I sat with that for a little while. And then little by little, I was fortunate enough to find a job through some connections of mine, and where my background was not questioned. And actually kind of going back to a little bit of what I was doing before, which was kind of nice because a lot of it felt familiar. But I also had this pull of like, did I just go through all of that just then to hide it? Because then I felt like I was lying once again, because people who didn't know exactly what had happened and this time had passed were like, where were you? And I was like, what do I say? And I had to lie again. I felt like, okay, I finally got to a place where I'd stopped lying, stopped hiding, and now I'm starting all over again. So I finally told one of a friend that I'd met, who I didn't know also had kind of a side hustle as entrepreneurship. And I spoke to her about it. Again, took me a long time. And she was like, wow. And she was like, do you mind speaking to a kind of a fire chat group that I have? And I was like, about my story? And she's like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, sure, why not? And it felt like just a great outlet for me to then share. And it was really more cathartic than anything. I was not by any stretch looking for this to be anything. And then all of the ones, the women that I met were all, whether they're still in their 9 to 5, whether they had just left the 9 to 5 and were starting their own businesses. So it felt such a natural transition. And having had spent, many years in sales and marketing and business development, that part of it really was really fun and came into play for me, because they would ask me questions that obviously I knew a lot about and experience in. And then the storytelling part of it really just kind of went full circle. And then I was at a crossroads at the job that I was at, where that I was being pulled and doing more speaking, more sharing, because then I was asked to do workshops, or I was asked to be on a panel and working kind of through all of that and still doing the job. And I was asking the universe, praying God, everything, like, what do I do? Like I don't know if this is a thing. I don't even know if I'm allowed to be talking about it, if I should be talking about it, if it sounds like I'm glorifying it. I don't want that. So I asked, what should I do? Give me a sign. And that week, my job was eliminated.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, that was not the sign I was looking for. It's almost one of those where you're asking for a sign and you get it, but you're not ready for it. So you're like, no, not that sign, a different sign. So I really took that as a sign that said, okay, like I was always I was going to be using that job as an excuse, of course.
Right.
And so I went head full in, no backup plan, no plan B, no plan C, D, E. I just went in and I started my business, and just more leaning into the sales and marketing because that's kind of where my strengths were, but being brought back into storytelling because I was sharing more and more of that. And then I was asked to come on a panel in LA, and that really sparked the whole process of everything, of the business. And then, of course, in this type of setting, I can only share so much, and people had all these questions, which is then why I started my podcast called Bounce Back Like a Badass, and where you could really dive into all of the stories. And so I did that, again, more for me than anyone else, just to really just get it out. And then I was asked to do workshops and more speaking engagements, and then become a keynote speaker. And that's kind of how all of this has evolved. And I know that sounds like a short amount of time, but it's been about 10 years in the making. So it always seems like it's shorter, but it's, there's many missteps and many times where I questioned if this was the right way, if I should just find a job, if I needed, to do something else. But each time something has called me back to this. And I feel like this is the reason why all of that has happened. And the reason why I stepped into this was also not just for my own story, but because it really gave others permission to share theirs.
Right.
If I can be vulnerable, if I can accept the consequences of my mistakes and own up to them and own that story, regardless of how embarrassing, shameful, regretful that it is, then maybe they could too. Mm-hmm. And that really is why I do what I do. That's why I love storytelling. I love hearing people's stories, because I know it is our superpower. It really, once we accept it, accept it and own it, it really can become something powerful.
So when you were going through this process of being found out, so to speak, and, being in that type of a position where all of a sudden the expose is happening, how are you dealing with that? I'm sure people had opinions, judgments. How did you even work through some of that?
Well, when you asked me what I was like as a child and that people pleaser, so you can imagine that shock of that, where I did so many things to pretend to be somebody I wasn't. And so being revealed as this, although it doesn't define me now, it certainly defined me then,
right,
was a shock to my system. So mentally, emotionally speaking, the lowest of the low that I could have ever been. The thing that kept me going was my sister, who was it's like my mom, just her giving me advice, how to keep my head above water, how to think beyond this, how to try to manifest the life that I could have after all of this is over. It was obviously it's a wake-up call, but I found myself in really low states, of depression, of anxiety, and trying to climb out of that darkness. And then once that faded, when I left, as I started a new life, and I really ran away from here. That was the best way to explain it. I could tell you that I had opportunities elsewhere, but I was just trying to run away from my problems. As big as this city is, it is a very small town. Everybody knows.
Yes.
So one thing happens, everybody knows. And so I bolted out of here. And in that time frame, rebuilt my life. And that really, obviously, that helped. But in the back of my mind, this was always there. If I saw a cop car that was behind me, well, prior to me coming in, I would think, oh, they're here to get me. It was like, it's that kind of anxiety, because I didn't know what was happening. I was being, kept up to date, but, I didn't know what up to date meant. And there was a whole other story in all of that. But, and then when I finally went to prison, that is a whole other state in itself. That was the most humbling experience, obviously, I've ever had. And shock, obviously, but also just a state of, okay, like I could either, there's in that time frame as well, there was the lows where like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to be around. Those thoughts obviously came in. Again, the beacon, the light, my daughter, my sister, my family, those are the things that kept me going. If I could and the thoughts were always, okay, if I can make it to tomorrow, then maybe I'll make it to the next day.
Right.
And then maybe I'll make it to the next day. And then I came home and such a high, still awkward. It's like, when I first came home, my friends had a party for me and it was so awkward. I was delighted and happy to see everybody, but the whole feeling was just awkwardness. No one really wanted to ask the questions that I'm sure they wanted to ask. And I certainly didn't want to, at the time, talk about anything. So everyone just pretended we were having a party. And, for whatever reason, I was just coming home, but it was very weird. And that was when I realized that things had really, really shifted. And changed. And I had changed and they had changed and everyone had changed, including my husband, because it was that night actually that he asked for a divorce. And so it was like one shock after another. And then coming home and, coming to grips with everything that had happened and trying to reconcile all the relationships that had ruined my credibility, all of those things. So a lot of low times.
I would say too, and I don't know the logistics of it all, but I know if, going through something like that, first of all, your reputation is gone. And there's not many people I would say that would really stick through and say, hey, you know what, you made a mistake. Let's help you get out of this. Like, that's when you really start to see who's in your corner, because like you said, it is a significant mess, right? But there's still something to be learned in the mess when it's occurring. It's just we don't always see it right away. So you have to lean into the people who are like, you know what? I love you anyway.
And there were definitely those. And there were definitely the ones where I really thought there was a strong bond and there wasn't. And I have to remind myself that they have every right to feel the way that they do.
Right.
And the situation just wasn't for them, and they can form whatever opinion and judge however they want to judge. And that's okay. I don't need to be involved with that person.
You're right. It almost maybe developed you to be unoffended, because the offense, the reality is what happened really happened to you.
Yes.
And so you're the only person who could really climb through this, out of this, over this, however you see it, and you would be the one to pick up the pieces.
Exactly.
So it's like you're saying this happened, you were found out. You're going through the legal process. In the meantime, you need to get out of Vegas because it is the big little city. So you want to get out, you're trying to start new, you start a family. Next thing you know, now your freedom is taken unexpectedly.
Right.
Then you are spending 19 months in prison, and your husband's raising your daughter. You're building a life in the system just to get through the system. Then you come out and you're faced with another of, I want a divorce, I don't want this, you need to find a job, a place to live. So like the journey is, and like you said, the Reader's Digest, this is over time.
Right.
This isn't just over a 2-week span.
Exactly.
Like, this is storm, then calm, then storm, then calm, so
it's like a flood. And then just when things, as with anything, as with life, right? And that's, probably a perfect mirror to what happened. It's as with life, things come and they go. And just when I thought things were okay, another thing comes through, but that is life.
Right.
And I have to remind myself in time, like in those times, that I can do hard things, and I have done hard things. I've gone through something a lot of people, a good percentage of the world will never have to go through. And I survived it. And I, was able to build a life despite that.
Right.
But still talk about it. And and still have it be part of me. It doesn't, again, define me. It's not me.
Right.
It's just a part of me. It's just what happened. But we all have stories like that. I think we all do. And that's why storytelling is so important to me. But because we all have storms, we all have, these moments where like the storm just does not let up and it feels like the end of the rope. And many times it's like, okay, just take me.
Right. Yeah.
Storm, just take me wherever you want to take me. But there's a part of you that hangs on, that clings on to a branch, a tree trunk or whatever to get back up. And that's what I have to remind myself, because again, it wasn't just because I decided one day to become a storyteller that everything worked out. It's not, there are definitely thousands of failures along the way, but all of the things that have happened have really shaped, one, who I am today, two, the business that I have, and three, what my passion is about what I do and how I tell my story and how I approach my story. Because no, I don't ever want to glorify, anything that I've done. And a lot of people's stories that I end up helping them share, a lot of it is the trauma of it is all inflicted by somebody else. A lot of it has, mine is self-inflicted. So yes, there's a way in which I can accept that and move on from it. When it is inflicted upon you and it's attached to other people, you feel like you have an obligation, or you're, for them, for their stories, and for, to mention other people. But I think that there's such a release when you can just say the words, and how, like you said, it happened to me. Yes, I know my actions affected a lot of people. I do not,
but it was you.
But it was me. I was the one also that had to rebuild my life. I had to be the one to find a job. I had to be the one to all of those things with the help of other people and the support of other people. But it was me. And if I didn't want to do it and I couldn't find the strength to do it, no one was ever going to do it for me.
I agree. So her journey didn't stop there. And we're going to go into where Cat is today. And I think, the thing is, there's a message that comes from every mess, right? And my mind goes to, why do you even think that it even happened? What do you think the behavior was behind the action that you felt like, hey, I'm going to take this money and, obviously you weren't thinking in the consequence mode, right? You were thinking as like, this is normal.
Immediate gratification mode.
Right. And so let's talk about that for a second, because as a woman entrepreneur now, I know personally that everyone wants instant gratification. It's almost like a disease, right? And so, you saw what happened from wanting that. So now that is not the way to get instant gratification.
There is nothing about that.
But I think what impresses me and why I asked you to come on the show was, you and I spoke on the same stage at the same event, and I thought, look at you go. And watching the reaction of these women as they're watching her share her story, their mouths were dropped. It was like they were shocked. And in my head, I was like, you go, girl. Like I had the total opposite, because I was thinking, wow, how brave it must be, how brave you are to even sit here with me and repeat it, because now this has been just a part of your story, but you share it, and you share it confidently. I don't see it as glorification. I see it as authentic. And the fact like, hey, I did this. I did it. I paid the price. I'm healing. And maybe some part of you will always be on the healing piece of it.
Absolutely.
And maybe some part of you now is like, what was I thinking? Right? Because we grow from these. And so now you have turned this into something beautiful, in the sense of where women or men who hear this story, number one, you're teaching them ownership. Just forgive yourself, which is huge.
Probably two of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
You could say it.
Yes.
And I have said it, and I've said it, before. But actually owning it. And owning it meaning talking about it, not
forgiveness,
shying away from it, not shying away from the conversations, whether that's internal or external, and probably a lot more internal than anything else. And forgiveness, because I don't think I could have done this or I would be doing this if I didn't forgive my younger self for having made terrible decisions. And that, just has really turned my life upside down. And now I can look back in the best way that I believe it really did. I would not be sitting here with you today. I would not be speaking on stages. I would not be speaking to the people that I am speaking to and working with had those things not happened, but also had I not owned up to this.
Right.
Had I just kept it hidden, which is really something I thought I would do, because why would I think about this?
Well, it's just, it's fear of judgment, fear of so many things. But the thing is that human beings make mistakes all the time. And, we're in this society where they want everything to be picture perfect, that instant gratification. Everyone looks at social media as like, oh, if it's on social media, that's how it is. That's how it is. And the reality is, no, there's messes everywhere.
It's not.
But what I keep saying is, in this instance, in the story, it's what you did. It's how you healed. And then you're taking this story, and there's others that are like you, that have similar stories, who are afraid to share, which keeps them from growing in life.
Absolutely.
And in business. Look at you now. You're a successful woman entrepreneur with a beautiful child, traveling the world, sharing your expertise. Now, did you ever think when you were sitting in prison that you were going to be here today?
Never. It was never a thought in my mind. I just wanted, one, to come home, and two, really the goal there was just to get through the 19 months, sweep this under the rug, and never speak of this again, and move on with my life. That was the goal. Never, ever. This was not even, I couldn't have envisioned this. I couldn't have even spoken it back then. But now here we are.
Right.
Here we are. And I speak about it. And that confidence in people ask me all the time, how do I get that confidence in speaking about it? I get the confidence because what I receive back from those that I share it with is that it has inspired them. It has empowered. Yeah. It has given them permission to share theirs. And I talk about this a lot on stage, that when I get off stage from speaking, I always get pulled aside. And it's in that moment of vulnerability where my story becomes their story. And they're not hearing exactly what I'm talking about. They're thinking about their story while I'm speaking. And that is always my goal. I really want people to not take away my story, but to take away their own story. And I get pulled off stages and people tell me their story right then and there, sometimes for the very first time. And that is where my confidence comes from, because I can bet if I was the person in the audience, someone like me was up there speaking, I would be the first in line to share my story with them.
Right.
And that's what I want. And that is what happens, because I think really that is authenticity. That is the vulnerability part of what we do, and that we crave from other people, because life is not perfect. I'm going to leave your studio here, and I'm going to get back into my sweat so I can travel home. So, but that's the reality of things. And there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. But it's the process, it's the learning, it's the failures. Those to me are always the stories that I want to talk about. And I often talk about, a lot less focus on the highlights, which is great. I do want people to understand that this could happen, and this could be something, this is a path that they want to take, that there is this. But also I want to focus on the lowlights, because that's what gets us to this point.
It does.
And I've never met a person that has never gone through anything. Never. I've never met one person. It's usually they've gone through hundreds of things that have gotten to them to where they're at today. And I want to talk more about that because that's where we really learn from one another. And that is where I'm captivated. I feel like that is where we grow the most. And that is where I learn the most. This is fun. It's great. It's wonderful. And I want more of it, of course. But also there's a lot of failures that happen behind the scenes and things that don't work out and, whatever, things that I may regret, doing or saying, but we just learn from them and move on. And that's where my confidence really comes from in sharing this is the feedback that I get from people.
So you now are, like I said, you're this strong business owner. You have this incredible podcast. I know you have a book coming out.
Yes.
And so all of these different things that you've gone through, you have now been able to utilize as fuel to propel you to places that you probably never thought. What would you say now in your current journey has been the most special of all of this?
My daughter.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We cry on Rise. It's okay.
Probably my daughter and having her see what I've been able to create despite that. And telling my daughter my story was the hardest. And I had such anticipation for it. In the earlier days, right, when she was still very young, I was so excited to share with her the things that I was doing. Maybe not so much the story, but just kind of things that happened. But as she got older, as she started to form her own opinions, and as I delayed sharing this with her, I got really scared because I'm about to tell her some not so great things about her mom and disappointments and regrets and embarrassment and shame and things that you as young kids, you tell people not to do, right? Do not lie, do not steal. And here I am, I'd done all those things. And so telling her was the most difficult thing I have ever had to do. It's the most difficult speech I have ever had to prepare. I just tried to really prepare myself and anticipate some questions that she may have. And now that I've told her, and I told her just recently within the last year and a half, and now she kind of understands the reason for the podcast called Bounce Back Like a Badass, the writing, the speaking, what I do, storytelling. Now it fits. She's understanding and putting all the pieces together. And so for me, she's the most incredible part of all of this. And again, nothing that I would have ever imagined. And the part for me where looking forward is what else I can show her that one she could also do. And also just accepting that we all have faults, right? And that we all make mistakes. And we do have to own up to them. And as hard as and as difficult as it is, and hopefully, the lesson is like that it doesn't take you as long as it didn't need to own up to it and to hide it. And that you are, and I tell her, I said, you are going to make mistakes. You are not going to be perfect, and nor do I expect you to be. You do have to own up to them and face the consequences, regardless of how difficult that process is. And she's seeing it, and she sees what I do, and she sees that I go and speak and travel and on podcasts and things. So for me, that is the brightest light and the thing that keeps me going and the thing that I'm most proud of.
And I think you have every right to be. When does your book come out?
The book comes out in September. I'm so excited, and it comes. So we're doing a lot of pre-launches and things leading up to September. So there's going to be another event at the end of September where I'll be speaking as well, and that's when we're going to be launching the book. And it's just about being you and understanding what does that really mean. And the incredible women that are sharing their personal stories in this book are all talking about what that means to them. And I think that really is about, again, accepting who we are, accepting the consequences, and really learning from all of our experiences and understanding who have we become because of them.
Right.
And then we're so excited. So, and we're talking about, it's funny that we, in our conversation here, we keep talking about beauty and mess. And that is the title of my chapter. I love it. Beauty in the mess.
I love it.
That really is, I wholeheartedly feel that is for everyone, that could really fit into a lot of people's stories, is that there's such beauty in the mess once we accept, own up to it, and forgive.
I agree. And I just, I think I've said this to you so many times, just in conversation, that you just amaze me. Hearing you speak, seeing the reaction, and it's not just like the whole, it's not the fact that of what was done. It's more of how you handled it and how you persevered through and where you are today. And like the way that you're utilizing this to really help other people not to be afraid to stand up and say, I messed up and I need to learn how to help myself, forgive myself. But this is part of my story, because you said this earlier when we first started, everyone has a story. It's our superpower. And so when you're sharing this, and this is very vulnerable for you, I only can think that the people who listen to you, who watch you and work with you so closely, they know that you're a big advocate for them. And that's a big shift for you.
Yes.
So now you can boldly, confidently go into these rooms and say, yeah, I did that, but this is what I do now.
Exactly.
And you don't have to feel that shame and that, that yucky, because it's like you turned into this beautiful butterfly who just is now,
and
free.
That was always the fear when I first started to share, was I would get stuck in that story.
But you're not.
And the beauty of it is that I'm not.
Yeah.
And that was that was one of the first things I really fought hard to not stick to that story, because no, my life is not wrapped up in a pretty ribbon. It never is, and it never is to anybody. But also that I'm really trying to show you can move past these things.
Yes,
we can, but we can also go back and learn and go back and find the lessons in all of it. Mm-hmm. But also that there's a pathway to move on and again, and begin to rebuild from that standpoint and not get stuck right there. Because people have always said, you keep sharing this story. And I said, yes, I do. I said, I'm not proud of it, but I also need people to understand that you can move away from it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that I need to stop talking about it. I'm telling you, it happened. I did it. I paid the price for it. But also I'm not stuck there anymore.
Right.
And that is the thing that really, again, we talk about that keeps me going, is that it shows everyone that, okay, like if she can get past it and boldly talk about it, and
so can I.
And yeah, it really is for me why I do what I do.
I think it's just there's so many more new beginnings for you in the journey of entrepreneur and in the journey of mom. Who knows what's next, because the only limit at this point is you. So you control, like you're in control. You can decide. You have so much to look forward to. I think that you sharing that with your daughter was probably one of the best things you could have ever done, because in her eyes, I'm sure she sees you as this strong woman who persevered no matter what. So,
and I think it gives her the confidence to try things. Mm-hmm. I really think it really does give me confidence to try new things, despite how scary it may be, despite other people's opinions. And people have always asked me again, when I share my story, am I afraid of what people are going to say? And I always say, well, people are always going to have an opinion about what I do. Really, yeah. Like whether they like me or they don't like me, or they trust me or they don't trust me, or they have judgment about it, they will, regardless if I share it. And I said, so if I stop sharing because of that, it helps nobody.
Right.
I said, so people will always have an opinion, and that's great. That's the world that we live in. And I'm grateful for that people can share their opinions. And if they want to pass judgment, they can.
Yeah, let them.
Yeah, it's just not let me. Exactly. Do it. You don't live my life, and that's okay. And you're not part of it, and that's okay too. And that's great. And
the ones that are meant to be will, and the ones that are will not.
Exactly.
So how do people find your podcast?
It's actually relaunching today.
Oh, exciting. Okay.
It's on Apple. It's on anywhere you listen, and Spotify, and it's called Bounce Back Like a Badass. And initially the first season was just about my story, and because there was a lot, and there still is, but now the focus is and will be continuing sharing stories of other people's resilience, their comebacks, their bounce backs, and their pivots in life. Because again, we all have it, and we could learn so much every time I speak to somebody, regardless of what they've gone through. Nothing has to be, it doesn't have to be the same as mine or similar or anything like that. Just pivots in life and transformations. I learned so much. And that's the main thing. So if we can just learn from one another, there is no overnight. There is no overnight success. But if I could learn from someone where it, cuts my time from 10 years to 5, or, 6 months to 3, and we could just learn these lessons from one another. That is what the podcast is all about, is sharing those stories, and to really realize that we are more alike than we are different. And if we could just start to be vulnerable and authentic and really find our true selves in our stories, we could help more people.
100% agree. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today. And how can we connect with you? How can people connect with you, follow your journey, get your book? And hopefully a solo is in the process too. I know we talked about that.
We did. A solo definitely needs to be in the process, because there's only so much I can cram into a chapter. You can find me on Instagram at The Real Cat Coley. Facebook is the same. catcoley.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn, again, The Real Cat Coley. And email me at cat@catcoley.com. So anywhere, Cat Coley, you can find me, DM me. I'm here. The best place to find me or to DM me would be on Instagram. That's the place I spend most of my time in. And the book comes out in September. We're so excited, and we're going to be doing a few things along the way, some virtual launches. You'll be able to find it on Amazon. So we're really, really excited, because we're, again, showing everyone, every walk of life, regardless of if you're an entrepreneur or, you're still at a 9-to-5, or wanting to do any of those things, or you're somewhere in between, a mom. All of us, I believe, that are writing this book are all moms. And there's just so much to learn from one another. I'm so excited about this book and the ladies that are in it. And so thank you to Hanna for
thank you.
launching our book. So, and then hopefully, soon, very soon, my own book.
Well, thank you again for coming on and being so open, and cheers to new beginnings, continuing, and we're just grateful for you.
Absolutely. And it was so wonderful meeting you that one day again. It's what happens when we step into, right?
Because I was one that came up to you and said, oh my gosh, I need to. So when you were describing that, I was like, yep, that's me.
And again, and I'm the same way when I hear people speak as well. I'm just like, I'm so drawn to it. And, that's the way in which we connect, is through stories.
It is.
So
your story is your superpower.
Absolutely.
And be authentic, be true, be vulnerable. Just be you.
Be you. Yeah. Be authentically you as much as you can. And you start by sharing your stories.
Love it. Well, thank you.
Thank you.